Perhaps his most controversial government appointment yet, Sir Keir Starmer is due to make Lord Mandelson our man in Washington. Once dubbed the Prince of Darkness for his adept political nous, it's expected that he'll be able to navigate the new Trump administration. Well, let's get some views on that and lots of other issues with the Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander, who, as you can see, is here with us this morning. Morning to you. You're making an announcement on potholes, which we'll come to in a moment, but I do want to start off by asking about the appointment of Lord Peter Mandelson to the job of British Ambassador to the US. As we were referencing there, some see him as a divisive figure, so why do you think he'd be good at the job?
So I think Lord Mandelson is an individual of very significant international standing. He's been a previous EU Trade Commissioner. He's a very experienced politician. We need someone as the next ambassador to the US who is going to be able to promote our economic and security interests with one of our closest allies. And so I think he is a really good fit for the job.
Well, yes, you mentioned the fact that he'd been an EU commissioner. He also campaigned passionately against Brexit, and yet Donald Trump has, in the past, said he thought the UK would be better off without the European Union. So does that mean he's necessarily the best person to influence Donald Trump?
So I think he is a person of incredible skill and talent, and the world has changed a lot since that Brexit referendum back in 2016. The world has moved on. I know that the Prime Minister has spoken once or twice now to the President-elect, Donald Trump, and we want to be able to work with America in our country's economic interests. And I think Peter will put that at the forefront of his mind in any work that he does in the future.
Well, yeah, you talk about economic interest. Presumably, one of his main tasks will be striking a good trade deal and seeing off possible US tariffs as well. I mean, how crucial is that to the UK economy, especially given that the Bank of England yesterday said that the economy had performed worse than expected, with no growth at all between October and November?
So our ability to trade is vitally important, and our ability to trade with America and our closest neighbours in Europe and across the world is key. And so I think Peter's experience of operating in that trade environment is going to be really important. As far as I'm aware, since Donald Trump was elected, he has made no comments about removing tariffs in relation to, in introducing tariffs rather, in relation to the UK. With respect to the economic forecasts, my understanding is that the OBR are still projecting growth in the economy. Clearly, we have got a lot of work to do on things like planning reform, getting investment into our infrastructure, transport, energy, which is really going to help the economy start to fire on all cylinders and get more money into people's pockets. So we've been in government for what is about 5 months now. We're not pretending that it's a job done by any stretch of the imagination. And so there is going to be a lot more to do to ensure that we're a country where businesses want to come to invest. We had that investment summit a couple of weeks ago with £60 billion worth of investment that was being announced. Really significant, much more than when the last Conservative government had their investment summit.
But the government's making growth even harder because of the budget. The Bank of England said the economy was stagnating after the budget because businesses are shedding jobs and they're raising prices, and they expect zero growth in the final 3 months of the year. Has the budget killed off growth?
So, as I said, the OBR are still projecting growth into the future. The Chancellor made the right decision, in my view, to prioritise investment in public services, because if we've got 7 million people languishing on an NHS waiting list, that's not good for the economy, because people can't work if they're waiting for hip operations, back operations. It's also not good for the economy if the railways are constantly on strike, as they were at the end of the previous Conservative government. People can't get to work, leisure plans are being cancelled. And so I think in the first couple of months of this government, we took decisive action to deal with some of those public sector strikes that were holding our economy back. There's clearly more that needs to be done. As I've said, the planning reforms that are coming next year are going to be really important about building those 1.5 million homes. The construction sector is going to be really important. And also, it's one of the reasons why I'm here today. You know, we've got to tackle the appalling state of our roads. because at the moment our country's roads resemble an obstacle course some of the time. And so us announcing £1.6 billion to put into highways maintenance, an uplift of £500 million on what the previous Conservative government spent last year. That's a 50% increase. We think that that could, fill 7 million additional potholes next year. And so that's one of the reasons why I've come onto your programme, to try and spread a little bit of Christmas cheer.
Absolutely, and I'm sure it'll be very welcome that that money has been allocated, and it sounds like a lot of money. But just to point out, the trade body, the Asphalt Industry Alliance, the AIA, estimates that the pothole backlog repair bill stands at as much as £16 billion. So while the money may be welcome, is it actually enough?
Well, it's a very significant increase on what the previous government was doing. As I say, it was a 50% increase on what was available last year. I'm not pretending it's going to sort every single pothole in every corner of the country, because it's clearly not. But we had to reverse this decade of decline. We have seen underinvestment on our roads for years and years. And so the fact that people who are going to be driving home this Christmas can do so safe in the knowledge that next year our roads are going to be in a better state. I think that's going to be really welcomed by people, because, let's not forget as well, if you are hitting a pothole, having to take your car to a garage, it can be hundreds of pounds worth of expense. And so this is also going to be helping people with their household budgets as well.
I want to pick you up on what you were saying earlier about rail strikes. You said that the government came in and resolved rail strikes, and yet we've got workers at Avanti West Coast due to go on strike on New Year's Eve after rejecting a deal put forward to them. I mean, surely people would expect not to have to deal with more rail strikes over the holiday period after the generous pay offers that you gave the industry when Labour first came into power.
So let's be clear about the difference between what was happening under the previous Conservative government, who had a scorched earth approach to industrial relations, and we saw strike after strike after strike.
Well, we're seeing strikes again now.
One second, let me finish. Across the whole of the network. The industrial action that may happen on Avanti West Coast is one train operating company. There are 14 train operating companies across the country. So this just applies to one area. I don't want the strike to happen. Nobody wants these strikes to happen. But it is not on the same scale as what we saw under the previous Conservative government. And so what I want to see happen is for the leadership of Avanti West Coast, which is currently a privately owned train operating company, to get back round the table with the RMT to see what can be done to avoid action happening on the 30th of December, the 2nd of January. My understanding at the moment from Avanti West Coast is that they would be running some services on those days. They might be running about a quarter of services. I understand that that won't be acceptable to people, but it is not on the same scale as the repeated strike action that we saw under the last government, and which we fixed when we came in. Those strikes cost nearly £1 billion over those 2 years. And so it was really important that we reset the relationships with the trade unions. I'm not always going to agree. Sometimes the trade unions will be right, sometimes they will be wrong. I want to see this industrial action resolved, if it's possible to resolve it before the 30th.
Just a quick question on this, though. Do you think that those generous pay settlements that were offered by the government, do you think they could be a mistake? Have they emboldened the unions to push for more?
So we had to stop the strikes and the industrial action that was happening. The calculations were that over the 2 years, we lost about £850 million worth of revenue. It was having a debilitating impact upon the economy. As I said to you previously in our conversation, people were unable to get to work. People were routinely cancelling leisure plans. That is dreadful for the economy. And when people start to bake in the fact that the railways aren't going to be running, that's really bad news for the long-term health of the public transport system as well, because they decide, well, I'm not going to jump on the train, I'm going to use my car instead. And I don't think anyone wants to be in that position.
OK, well, Heidi Alexander, we're out of time, but thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning.